Grassley.
Welcome, Judge. On March 1, 2016, Justice Ginsburg delivered a eulogy for her friend, Justice Scalia. Justice Ginsburg said, quote, "We were different, yes, in our interpretation of written text, yet one in our reverence for the courts and its place in the U.S. system of governance," end of quote. Justice Ginsburg's remarkable life and legacy will be honored for a generation, and also Justice Scalia's. The Senate is now tasked with carrying out perhaps its most solemn duty under the Constitution. As we go through this process, we should heed Justice Ginsburg's words with a shared reverence for the court and its place in our constitutional system. This idea of place in our system of government is critical. Ours is a government of separated powers. The power to make, enforce, and interpret law isn't centralized in one person or one branch of government. That's not a mistake. You all know what our American Revolution was all about and what the Constitution is all about, because people at that time were sick and tired of one person, George III, restricting American colonies of freedom that English-speaking people elsewhere exercised. As Justice Scalia reminds us, the framers recognized the separation of powers as, quote, "the absolutely central guarantee of a just government, because without a secure structure of separated powers, our Bill of Rights would be worthless," end of quote. But this constitutional system only succeeds if each branch respects its proper role. A good judge understands it's not the court's place to rewrite the law as it sees fit. It's not his or her place to let policy, personal, or moral principles dictate an outcome of a case. We are fortunate. Judge Barrett's record clearly reflects this standard. She said, quote, "A judge must apply the law as written. Judges are not policymakers, and they must be resolute in setting aside any policy views that they might hold," end of quote. Judge Barrett's service reflects an exceptional intellect paired with deep commitment to the rule of law. So we look to those who know her well. She's received praise across the legal profession and ideological spectrum. Former colleagues at Notre Dame described the judge as, quote, "brilliant, industrious, gracious, and kind, and as a person of utmost integrity with an open mind and an even temperament that is prized in a judge," end of quote. She's also known as, quote, "a generous mentor." And she's known for her, quote, "her humility, graciousness, and her ability, born of her credibility, to build consensus among differing views," end of quote. Her students, quote, "expressed awe with the power of Judge Barrett's intellect, with her mastery and organization of complex material, and with her professionalism," end of quote. Leaders of more than 200 liberty-supporting groups across the country say Judge Barrett, quote, "possesses the judicial temperament and philosophy necessary as a bulwark for our Constitution and institutions of government," end of quote. 24 state governors described Judge Barrett as, quote, a woman of great moral character who is devoted to her country, community, family, and faith like many Americans, end of quote. The Wall Street Journal editorial board says, quote, President Trump's nomination of Amy Coney Barrett for the Supreme Court is the highlight of his presidency, end of quote. A promise kept, a promise made, a promise kept. Liberal Harvard law professor Noah Feldman called Judge Barrett, quote, a principled, brilliant lawyer, a genuine and good person, highly qualified to serve on the Supreme Court. That's a pretty high praise. I just recited from others. Moreover, Judge Barrett is a tireless mother of 7. For decades, I've led efforts in the Senate to improve foster care and promote adoption. So it's a privilege for me to welcome a justice like that to the Supreme Court. To sum up, Judge Barrett's qualifications and character are impeccable. Unfortunately, I expect the minority will try to rustle up baseless claims and scare tactics as they've done for decades, anything to derail the confirmation of a Republican nominee. Lately, the left is threatening to pack the Supreme Court in retaliation for this confirmation process. Even the Democrats' nominee for president and vice president have not ruled out such blatantly partisan policy grabs. Republicans are following the Constitution and the precedent. It seems Democrats would rather just ignore both. The left is also suggesting Judge Barrett's confirmation would be the demise of the Affordable Care Act and the protection for pre-existing conditions. That's outrageous. As a mother of 7, Judge Barrett clearly understands the importance of health care. So let's set the record straight. Then Professor Barrett criticized Chief Justice Roberts' conclusion that the Affordable Care Act penalty was actually a tax. Democrats say her viewpoint is radical and a preview of how she might vote on the court. First, her comments dealt with a provisional law that's no longer in effect. So the legal questions before the court this fall are entirely separate. Moreover, her criticism of Roberts' reasoning is mainstream, not only in the conservative legal community, but well beyond. I'm the chairman of the Finance Committee and was ranking member when Democrats unilaterally cobbled together Obamacare. I know a tax when I see one. This wasn't a tax. It was never discussed in committee as a tax. Even the Democrats who forced it through Congress insisted it wasn't a tax. Jeffrey Toobin wrote that Roberts' tax argument was, quote unquote, not a persuasive one. President Obama even said, quote, I absolutely reject the notion that it was a tax. Further, Democrats and their allies shouldn't claim to know how any judge would rule in any particular case. Just look at history. The left slammed Stevens for his consistent opposition to women's rights. They called Anthony Kennedy sexist and a disaster for women. They said David Souter would, quote, end freedom of women in this country. Ultimately, the left praised these very justices that they attacked. Their doomsday prediction failed to pan out. Democrats and their leftist allies have also shown that there is no low that they won't stoop to in their crusade to tarnish a nominee. And I saw it all as chairman of this committee when Kavanaugh came up. Some of my colleagues may once again try to misrepresent and outright disparage Judge Barrett's religious beliefs and affiliations. In 2017, they suggested Judge Barrett was too faithful or too Catholic to be a judge. One senator asked whether she considered herself an Orthodox Catholic. Another told her, the dogma lives loudly within you, and that is of concern. Let me remind everyone that Article 1 clearly prohibits religious tests for serving in public office. Mr. Chairman, I got 5 sentences left. Judge, you'll no doubt be asked how you'll rule on questions and issues and whether the case was correctly decided. I expect that you'll follow the example of Justice Ginsburg. A nominee should offer no forecast, no hints of how he or she'll vote, because that's the role of a judge. That's the place of a judge in our system of government. Unbiased, fiercely independent, faithful to the rule of law, and a steadfast defender of the Constitution. Judge Barrett, I look forward to our conversation. Once again, congratulations.